Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Francesca Del Mas, and I am a lecturer in strategy and enterprise at the Lincoln International Business School. And I welcome you to this webinar, which is part of the Resilient Lincolnshire series. Today, we'll be talking about business models. So let me just share the screen with you. Yeah, should work so that you can see my presentation. Yeah. So today we are going to talk about potential business model beyond the pandemic. And we will try to understand what companies might do to remain and be competitive in such a tough time. So again, this webinar is part of the Resilient Lincolnshire Executive Education series. Let's start talking about a business model. What is a business model? Well, it's really a trendy topic nowadays. A business model describes how a company creates, delivers, and captures economic value, meaning how an organization, how a company works. In the last few years, there has been so many changes in the business scenario, and several companies decided to change their way of doing business, their way of working, which doesn't really mean changing everything, but some aspect of the business. And guess what? The organizations that were able to do that are the most successful ones. Why should company think about reshaping their business models? Well, there are a variety of factors. For instance, the increasing pressure in terms of technological change. Let's think, for instance, about how much internet is changing everyone's life. Let's think, for instance, about phenomena like the e-commerce. E-commerce is available to everyone because of the internet, because of the credit card payments, because of mobile phones, because of data. So those are very relevant aspects for organizations. But there are also other kind of changes in the business scenario. So let's think, for instance, about the demographic and consumer habits of people. So people today, they do believe in a different way rather than some years ago because, for instance, of the use of technology, because of an increasing attention towards some relevant topics like sustainability. And all these aspects brought a radical revision of organizations and how organizations work. Let me make you an example. What would you think if someone called you and told you that a company is going to give you some free pots? Well, I guess that most of you would be definitely surprised, and most of you probably would think that this is a joke. How is it possible that an organization, a company, gives you some free products like a set of pots? Well, I guess that most of you have like a Facebook account. Our webinar is now going live through Facebook, or many of you watch YouTube, or many of you have a Gmail account. So are those organizations non-profit entities? Google, Facebook, I don't really believe that. But the thing that they did, they were able to shape and change the way they used to work. So what they do, they were able to separate the users of their products and services to those paying for such products and services. In the case of Google and Facebook, all those organizations that pay Google and Facebook for advertising their products. So this is a clear example on how business models change over time by adapting to the new technological changes and to the demographic and consumer habits. There are several frameworks that are usually, let's say, employed by organizations to describe the way organizations work. And the one that you can see now live on my screen is only one of such frameworks. This is just an example. In real life, it can be filled with some like bullet points on how a company is organized, on how a company works, and it is made by several building blocks that describe meaningful parts of the organization. So, for instance, we have the relationships that an organization has with the customers and the suppliers. We have the processes that an organization has, both internal as well as external. We have the products portfolio that the organization has for the customers, and we have the resources that are employed inside the organization to make sure that the organization is able to perform successfully. And we also have the relationship that the organization has with the society. That opens up a very interesting topic, which is the one of sustainability, both environmental and social. And in the middle of that, we have the most relevant part of a business model, which is the value proposition, meaning why an organization exists, what kind of mission and vision an organization has. If we look at this model, what we can say from the current COVID-19 pandemic is that there are big changes going on, and the COVID-19 pandemic is challenging our companies, our firms so much. So here the big challenge is, how can our companies, our organizations try to address such challenges? It is, of course, a matter of resilience, being able to go through these difficult times, but as all the crises, there can be opportunities to remain not only alive, but also to remain successful, to become maybe even stronger than ever, trying to, sorry, I don't know what is going on here, trying to really understand what is going on in the business environment. Unfortunately, I'm not really able right now to give you answers. Rather, what I will be doing during my presentation, I will try to address some paradoxes, some tensions that are emerging from the current COVID-19 pandemic. And if companies are able to address these paradoxes, these challenges, they can really be successful. Every organization must make its own analysis to try to see what the possible strategies are and what it is better for that specific organization. In doing so, I will try to address all the different building blocks of the business model, and you will see that every building block brings some specific challenges and issues to be addressed. Let's go from the first building block. The first building block is the one related to the society, meaning the relationship that the organization has with the society in terms mainly of environmental sustainability and social sustainability. Those are topics that are very important for us at Lincoln. We truly believe that it is everyone's duty to try to be as much sustainable as we can and try to address this society issue, which is definitely very relevant today, nowadays. But we cannot deny that addressing those issues in a proper way can also become an interesting business opportunity for organizations. So one first tension that emerges here is that, should organizations stay close, or does the COVID-19 pandemic give organization an opportunity for networking, for becoming more, let's say, open to the business environment? Well, let's try to think that some important companies, multinational companies like IBM, for instance, are donating their computational power to help scientists find a cure for COVID-19, using, for instance, Summit, which is the most powerful computer ever existing on Earth. For instance, Google and other multinational companies are offering practical tools to pupils and students all over the world, for instance, like Google Classroom, to help those students to enjoy online lesson and so go on with the knowledge that they should gather from school. So an open innovation project that was very famous during this COVID pandemic is the one that was able to transform a decathlon mask for scuba diving into a ventilation device for COVID patients. So the COVID might be the right opportunity for organization to become more open to the business environment, trying to create networks that are useful not only for the society, but even in a business term. Again, are we going through a linear or a circular economy? Even before the COVID-19 pandemic, the circular economy was a very, very hot and interesting topic for the business environment. Let's try to think that nowadays the price of the oil has collapsed compared to what it was before the crisis. The natural environment is somehow healing and it's benefiting from the lockdown. So those can even represent opportunity for the business environment to enjoy a better society, better linked to sustainability, but also creating new business opportunities. One other main, let's say, issue to be considered is that should organization work on a global or local perspective? Well, before the crisis, what consultants, let's say, and also the literature suggested to organization is that having a global perspective was much better because it increased, of course, the potential markets for the organization. But now, after the COVID lockdown, several countries had closed their borders. So is there a chance for organizations to start looking local again? So especially creating new opportunities for a local economy to, let's say, raise. And again, as all the tensions that we can identify in here, is there a possibility to merge the perspective? So can we go local, which is, of course, as you can say, something which is merging global on the one hand and local on the other hand? And again, digital transformation or human touch. Even before the crisis, again, digital transformation and how much technologies, especially those linked to Industry 4.0, could help somehow companies and be encapsulated into companies was a very relevant topic in academia as well as practice. But now we are thinking about the human touch. So we know that there are digital business models that are growing. Let's think about the e-commerce. Let's think about all the opportunities given by the blockchain, for instance. But human touch is still very relevant. Empathy is one of the most relevant soft skills that emerge during the COVID-19 pandemic, not only in healthcare, but also, let's say, in the business environment. Resilient is one of such characteristics. Change management, the ability to understand how to move, what to do next, and do it quickly is another soft skills, but it is not related to artificial intelligence. It's more related to the human brain. If we go on to another of the building blocks, we go to suppliers. So I know that yesterday there was an amazing seminar by the research group of Lincoln International Business School active in the supply chain management. So those guys are really smart. So I'm not really talking a lot about supply chain because it's their subject rather than mine. But still, if we look at the kind of relationship that an organization can have with the suppliers, some questions might arise. So do we look for long or short supply chains? What's the difference? Okay, if we have long supply chain, for instance, a UK-based organization can rely on suppliers that are located in other countries, even far away countries like, for instance, China or Brazil. That's a very long supply chain. If there are shorter supply chain, like a UK-based company has most of its suppliers based in the UK, that's a short supply chain. Why do organizations in general go for long supply chain? Because if, of course, suppliers are located in, for instance, developing countries with the lower cost base, of course, an organization can get better prices in the purchasing, and that, of course, benefits the business. But again, long supply chains might be interrupted. We do not really know what is going on with the COVID and when there can be successful interventions rather than social distancing, so meaning vaccine or pharmaceutical treatment. So until that time, probably long supply chains are more risky because they can be interrupted. Again, are we going for centralized or distributed supply chains? Which is the difference? If we have a centralized supply chains, it means that we have fewer points in which we, let's say, manage the supply chain. That, of course, results in a reductions of costs, of warehouse, and probably in a more effective management. But again, that might be very risky. If we have distributed supply chains in more, let's say, points, even in more countries, that can be more expensive, but for sure it's going to be less risky. And again, supplier-buyer relationship, is that only a market-based relationship, or can it be upgraded to a partnership? Well, a partnership in this sense might be better because there can be divergent interest in the supply chain. In case of partnership, both or all the partners benefit from there, so probably they will tend to behave in a better way, meaning caring more about the common interest rather than their only interest. So this is another very critical point. If we look at resources, meaning the, let's say, all the resources that an organization uses for its business model, there are, again, a variety of open questions that must be addressed. One, for instance, is related to stock. We do know that stock is a critical resource in organizations because it's very expensive. Of course, from a management perspective, it would be nice to have huge stocks of goods or raw materials or whatever business the organization has, but at the same time, it's very expensive. And nowadays, with, of course, cash flow issues, is not probably doable. What the organizations were trying to do before the crisis was a just-in-time formula, which meant getting the stock or the goods or raw material when they were needed. It means right before, for instance, the production of the production cycle. Well, but just in time is very risky, and especially if there are interruptions, as we have seen, like in the supply chain, stock could not come on time. So again, is there something that companies can do to merge the perspectives, like a just-in-case formula, which stands exactly in between a just-in-time philosophy and a full-stop philosophy? Again, let's go to another very relevant resource of organization, people. I personally do not really like the term human resource very much. I do prefer human capital because I strongly believe in people. But anyway, technology is very advanced. Artificial intelligence is one of the, again, hot topics in nowadays economy, especially in some sectors. For instance, a couple of years ago, there was in healthcare in China a competition between physical medical doctors and, let's say, robots or computer-based artificial intelligence. They had to diagnose tumors and how severe those tumors were. Well, guess what? The artificial intelligent doctors were faster than the physical one, and also more accurate. So the big question is, will human intelligence be replaced by artificial intelligence? So are we going for human resources, or are we go for cyber physical systems, or is there something in between? Is the role of the human resource changing in organization according to the kind of activity to be performed, the kind of task, the kind of role? So this is something that organizations should really think of. Are we promoting local people, or are we going for worldwide talents? Well, the answer could be we should definitely invest in local people, and this is what we strongly believe at Lincoln. At the same time, there might be competencies that are developed somewhere else in the world, and that might be interesting or particularly useful for one organization. So how can we cope with these, let's say, needs that we might have? Well, for instance, one of the main topics of the COVID-19 was telework, working from home, smart working. Can we use smart working in case we need someone that lives overseas and that has specific competencies and skills that can be useful for the organization? Can we involve this person thanks to smart working, for instance, remote working? So this is, again, another interesting issue to be taken into consideration. If we go to the processes, which are internal as well as external, again, there are several issues that must be addressed. Again, one issue that we've just think about is the smart working. So do we prefer the office work, or do we prefer the remote work? Can we use blended formulas? Can, for instance, the smart working be used some days per week to make employers happy, so that they can save time, money, and stress in, for instance, moving from their homes to the workplace? We are in Lincoln, which is a beautiful place, but let's think about all those people living in huge cities like London, and people that can spend 2-3 hours per day only moving from their homes to the office place. Are there blended formula possible? Again, some companies might have invested during these months or weeks to allow smart working for their employees working on the IT systems, ensuring, of course, the security of the system, the cyber security. So can these investments be used to, let's say, make people happier, and again, trying to balance the well-being of workers with, of course, the need of the organization? If we look for instance, advertising or corporate branding image, what kind of, let's say, paradigm can we have? Are we going for a structured image, or are we going to, let's say, a more simple paradigm based on truth? Are the communication paradigms changing nowadays? And again, how are goods and products deliver? Do we rely on physical stores or e-commerce? So this is probably one of the most interesting points during the COVID-19 pandemic, because you know what happened, that people were used to stay at home. And so, of course, as you can imagine, e-commerce and home delivery were the most used ways to get in touch with customers. There are organizations, especially those working in the food industry, like restaurants, pubs, that move the part of the workforce from, I don't know, like waiters to delivery. And there are also new customer habits here that can be interesting. People are happy to stay at home. They are used to stay at home. Guess that in many countries, even Italy, I'm Italian, people are enjoying partying at home, calling friends, and for instance, cheering and tossing and having aperitifs online. So new business models are emerging, like, for instance, the ghost kitchens. Ghost kitchens are restaurants that are only for takeaway and delivery. And when it comes to delivery, also delivery can be done in different ways. Clean hands or drones, what it means, it can be done by people. Clean hands because I refer to all the safety, of course, regulations that we have nowadays with the COVID-19, or should we rely again on technology? In Milton Keynes, near London, there are robots delivering groceries, and they have been working on that for a long time now. So in that sense, you don't have humans bringing groceries at home, but you have robots doing that. So this is another big issue that companies should definitely think about. When it comes to product, again, there are open questions like how much offline, how much online when it comes to services. Can technology help? Are we going for own product, or are there any other formulas nowadays? Let's think about shared products. You know what is happening in big cities, for instance, like Rome in Italy, that the public transportation is collapsing because so many people are using that, but it is not complying with the social distancing. So people are relying on shared products like share cars, share bikes. And so this is again another big interesting issue when a company can rethink of its own products. Again, low cost or sustainable products. Well, those is a paradox, but still there can be formulas merging the two needs. But low cost is of course very good because it opens up to a bigger market, especially during an economic crisis. But still remember that consumer habits are changing. People are more and more sensitive towards sustainable products. Can a sustainable product be low cost or be have, let's say, a reasonable price? So this is another open question that can be particularly interesting for organizations. And again, emotions or technology. Are we relying on people or are we relying on chatbots? So I have a nice story to tell you here. So there is this Indian airline company, and they have a chatbot answering to the Facebook page. So there was an unhappy client because he was going to one place, but the airline delivered the luggage to another place. So he wrote a comment by saying, "Oh, congratulations, airline. You were able to fly me in Bombay and at the same time send my luggage to Goa. Congratulations." Of course, there was irony in that, but the chatbot could not realize that. The artificial intelligence only read the fact that there was a congratulation in the sentence, and congratulation usually is something very nice. So the chatbot replied, "We are so happy that you enjoyed our service." So this is what is happening with technology. So technology is becoming smarter, but still, how much is the human touch relevant for the client? How much are emotions relevant for the client? And when we look at the clients, we might find other paradigms, and we can also find some open questions that we already raised in some other of the building blocks of the business model. Again, are we looking for global customers, or again, are we looking at our local clients? Are blended formulas possible in that? Are we staying with our traditional clients, or are we going for the new tribes? Again, what is the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and crisis to shape the customers' habits? Customers that, for instance, like to stay at home, that do not really want to go out because they fear they can get the infection. People that are needing surgical masks when they go out and gloves. Are there new needs or habits? How can we translate these into new business opportunities? Well, you know that several, for instance, textile and fashion companies all over the world converted their production to surgical masks. Before, it was only for healthcare professionals, then it was for people. Now there is a huge market worldwide, for instance, for kids, because traditional masks cannot be used for kids because they have, of course, a smaller face. So they need a different mask. Is a child happy to wear a mask? No, but probably if that mask has the kids' favorite characters, cartoon characters, well, the child will be happy to wear the mask. So all these are huge business opportunity. And to conclude our seminar, we go to the very central part of the business model, which is the value proposition. So what I always teach my students when I lead my strategic management course, that corporate culture, why an organization exists, is the most relevant part of an organization. But nowadays, the business environment is changing so much. So, can we really adapt our corporate culture to today's challenges and today's opportunities? How will the new context shape the corporate culture? And again, are new business models possible for our organizations? Again, it does not really mean changing everything, but just making some reasoning, enhancing the dialogues about some of the building blocks that we have seen during my presentation. So the society, suppliers and clients, the product portfolio, the processes and the resources, and of course the value proposition. Are there any changes that can lead to more successful organizations that are not only resilient, that can not only go over the crisis, but that can become stronger because they are more close, for instance, to the business environment, to the type of clients, to the type of suppliers, and what are today's need of the market. So this is an open question. If you want to keep talking to me, you can either write on Facebook, and this is my email address, so feel free to contact me anytime. So I will now stop sharing my screen and probably you can see me again. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for writing me. If you have any question or something, feel free to write to me. I'd be so glad to get in touch with you. Okay? So thank you so much for being with me today. And I look forward to talking to you again in the next future and ad majora. Goodbye.